Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I have a video review of my first impressions of the Proeliator fetter from Poker Armory. In my previous video I had mentioned I had received 4 items from Poker Armory, 3 swords and 1 buckler, and this is the fetter I received in that package. I should mention I also own a side sword from them and 2 parry daggers, so that's 7 items from Poker Armory. And the first thing I will mention is this goes across the board for every item I've received from Poker Armory. The quality, the solidness, and the fit and finish of everything I've gotten from them has been top notch. Their quality is very good with their weapons. There aren't too many other reviews out there to sort of like weigh my opinion against. But as of right now, everything I've received, everything has been put together solidly, and for instance my side sword and my parry daggers, after probably over a year of use, are still solid. Nothing's loose on them. And when it comes to the aesthetics of their weapons, Poker Armory has a sense of uniqueness to some of their weapons on their website, and I think this is one of the best examples of that. So you can see for a fetter, it's got some unique characteristics to it. It's got a fuller, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the video. I'm going all the way down the blade, and that continues actually into the shield. And then they put a nice little curve on the shield and then a curve on the front edge as well, which just gives the actual blade a really nice design. And also, the blade is quite wide, which I'll talk about a bit later. It has a taper going to the tip. It's also got a little bit of a distal taper from the shield all the way to the tip as well on the blade edge, which is nice, which helps the handling characteristics, which I'll talk about later. All weapons I've gotten from Poker Armory, where the tang meets the shield, which meets the crossguard, always has a very small gap. Everything's very solid. And this one I've been using for 6 hours in total of sparring so far, and nothing's come loose. The edge of the actual blade has received the typical damage you would expect from all fetters, just a little bit of burring here and there, but no other major damage on the weapon itself so far. The peen on the end for the pommel is very flush and done very nice. I chose a scent stopper style pommel. It's just the preference I like, but it's also just crafted very nicely as well. The crossguard's got a couple little notches on it, which once again just adds to the touch and the look of the weapon. Not necessary, but it makes it a little unique. The leather they chose is also very nice. They put a little bit of ribbing underneath, which is nice for grip. And the seam is nice. Now you'll see there's a little bit of wear going on here. That's not to do with the quality. That's the fact that I wear plastic gloves, which a lot of people do, whether it's the Pro Gauntlet or the Infinities. That's actually where I hold my finger. And how I solve that is hockey tape. I put hockey tape. This one's way overdue to have the hockey tape replaced on it. But you'll see here, you can see the same sort of wear going on there as well. That's unavoidable for the way I happen to handle the weapon. So, whoops, that's not a quality issue. That's just inevitable. I will be putting hockey tape over this, but I really did want to use this for a little bit before I put hockey tape on it, just to see how it held up. And it did held up really nicely, and it wore out where I expected it to. So I'll just be sort of gluing that back down a little bit, putting some hockey tape over it, problem solved. So I think what I'd like to talk about next about this sword would be its overall design, how that affects the handling of the weapon, and how I like that. And are there any sort of like changes I would make on this weapon on my initial first impressions. So first of all, weight-wise, this is approximately about 3 pounds 3 ounces. I forget what that is in grams right now. And it's about 133 centimeters long. So that puts it about average for most fetters. My Regine was actually a heavy one. It's about 7 years old, and it was a bit of a heavier batch. Most Regines are between 3 and 3.3 pounds. This one was about 3.5, or maybe even a little over that. So in the hand, this feels a little heavier, but because the weight of this weapon is all out in the blade, whereas the Regines, most of the weight was right around this area, this has much better feel in the cut not only just like when you cut or parry someone's weapon or cut them, just as it cuts and flows throughout the air. This weapon flows really nicely through the air. You can keep it very tight to your body. It doesn't want to sort of arc away from you. Has really nice handling characteristics. Plus, because the blade is a little bit wider, and also I think a little bit to do with thicker down here than some, and the distal taper, it feels really nice in the bind. Or when you're pairing someone's weapon, finding their weapon, gaining their weapon, it has a really nice presence to it. I only have one, and I should also mention, it does have a spatulated tip on it. You know, and I'm on the fence. I don't really care whether it's rolled or spatulated. You know, Matt Easton, I believe, likes them rolled. You know, I think I prefer them rolled a little bit too, but I don't really care. But back to the blade itself. It is relatively flexible blade, particularly compared to a Regine. But yet, when you're cutting with it, it doesn't flop around. When you're finding another person's weapon, it also doesn't bend as well. It stays pretty strong in the bind. It could use one improvement. So when Poker Armory sort of looks at making more of these in the future, the fuller of this weapon carries pretty much to the spatulated tip. I think they could probably stop it somewhere around here. Because first of all, it's so small, it's not going to add much extra weight. It'll add like micro ounces probably to the overweight of the sword. But I believe the tip is a little too flexible. If there is any give in the bind, it's there. Also, this will be tough to demonstrate sitting down, but when you're moving this around with small motions with your tip, you know, so you're just trying to like bring your sword over to find another person's sword, control and gain it, it does wobble on the tip a little bit. So I think that could be rectified by simply stopping the fuller a little bit earlier. I would like to see the tip have a little less movement in it while you're moving it around, and that would probably make this like a 10 out of 10 blade. Right now it's probably like 8.5, close to 9, because it's got a few characteristics about it that are more nitpicky, but they could be improved. The other one is, because it's a flexible blade, it does take a while for the blade to actually set itself back to normal. When you're holding it with two hands, that goes away much faster, of course. It doesn't actually put much vibration back into the handle. It's actually just a little bit, kind of what I would consider a normal acceptable level. But possibly making this blade a tiny, like 5% stiffer, might improve the overall characteristics of this sword. Like I say, turning it from almost like a 9 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, and then adjusting the tip a little bit. Same thing, turning it from like a 9 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. Outside of that, handling-wise, aesthetic-wise, I really like this sword. I'll put it in the top 5 of all swords I've ever handled, and I've handled a lot. And that includes long swords versus fetters as well. Over time, this might go into the top 3, if not become number 1. I'm really enjoying this sword. Yeah, I'm really liking this weapon. I wouldn't say I'm surprised, because I did see one other review. There's very few reviews of this online that also kind of said the same thing. They were really impressed with this sword. So I will end it here because I'm just going to keep rambling. Thanks for watching the video, and look forward to another review of this coming out in the next 6 months to a year. Thanks.